Hello and welcome back to Modeling Manhood. Today we're going to do things a little bit differently. Typically I tell you guys a story and then kind of bring in a Bible passage at the end. Today I'd kind of like to do the two of them together and tell you about a Bible character that I can resonate with and just feel like I have a lot in common with. And maybe when you guys have picked up the Bible and are reading through different passages, you're like, you know what? I can relate to that person, or I've been in that situation, and it just kind of brings the Bible more alive in your life. And hopefully, by the end of this, it'll make sense to you guys. So the Bible character that I want to talk to you guys about is Samson. And there's a couple points that I want to talk about. The first point is Samson and I are both the oldest, and maybe you're the oldest child, and as parents, I know when we brought home our oldest boy from the hospital, my wife and I kind of looked at each other and were like, oh my goodness, they just let us take this human being out of this building, and now we are solely responsible for raising this child. And there's a huge responsibility that comes with that. And as parents, we often don't have other siblings to compare that oldest child with, so we compare them to ourselves. And I can remember my parents saying that I was the experimental child, the one that paved the way for my other siblings that came after me. And I just kind of feel like I'm a lot like Samson in that way. The second reason why I feel like I'm like Samson is because I've definitely disappointed my parents through the years, and ultimately disappointed my Heavenly Father. And by the grace of God, those things have been forgiven, and I have had to make amends with things that I've done wrong, and sometime I'm going to be accountable for those things as well. And Samson ended up in a lot of trouble with a lot of girls, and ended up in prison. And we're going to kind of end at that point. But I wanted to talk to you guys about the third reason I feel like I'm a lot like Samson. And that's Samson's strength. We don't know how strong Samson was, but we do know that there was moments in his life when he picked up a jawbone and killed 1,000 Philistines, or grabbed a whole bunch of foxes and tied them together, or killed a bunch of men so that he could make good on a promise to provide like tunics and cloaks at his wedding feast for all the members that were there. And there was multiple times where the strength of the Lord prevailed and gave him the ability to take on a lion. I've never fought a lion, although it would be pretty cool. I'd be willing to do that with my bare hands, and you know, but that'd be super neat. But the Lord's given me moments where the strength that I have physically was just kind of like overpowered, and I've done some pretty crazy things, and don't want to get too involved in that, but it's like, wow, where did that burst of strength or whatever come from? And just pretty cool when that power comes over you and you're able to do some pretty neat things. The fourth thing that I want to close with today is Samson in the verses found in Judges 16. It talks about his death. And remember, Samson is in prison, and they had pulled both of his eyes out. And the Philistines bring him out for entertainment at this feast that they have. And Samson ends well. I just wanted to read that to you guys and encourage you guys too in your walk. And this is chapter 16 of Judges, starting in verse 23. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to rejoice. And they said, our God has given us Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed many of us. And when their hearts were merry, they said, call on Samson, that he may entertain us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he entertained them. They made him stand between the pillars. If you can imagine Samson like in the pillars, just kind of like chained up, and people were probably throwing stuff at him and poking him and just tormenting him. And he wasn't able to see it coming. He could only hear it coming because he had taken his eyes. And Samson said to the young man who held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the house full of men, lean against them." Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were about 3,000 men and women on the roof, who looked on while Samson entertained. And this is where Samson ended well. Then Samson called on the Lord and said, "O Lord, please remember me and please strengthen me one last time. O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." And Samson grasped the 2 middle pillars on the house, and he leaned his weight against them. And his hand on the left and his hand on the right pressed. And you guys have read this story, and you know that the house came down. So I'm going to read that to you. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he bowed with all his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed in his death were more than those he had killed during his life. And his brothers and his family came down and took him, and brought him and buried him between Zophra and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. And he had judged Israel 20 years. And kind of a sad ending, but you think about all those years that Samson had wasted. He had been the ruler for 20 years in Israel. And some of the decisions that he made probably weren't the best decisions. And some of the decisions that we've made in our lives and that I've made in my life haven't been the best of decisions either. But I'm just thinking how he ended it well. Kind of sad to think that he took his life. And I hope that if you guys are in a situation where you're feeling like that, that you know that there's hope and that somebody loves you who created you. But I hope that what I'm doing in bringing these videos to you guys is bringing meaning and life to a world that's so lost and so dark, and just is poking at Christians and saying, "Oh, look at those stuck up, good for nothing Jesus freaks or Jesus lovers," or whatever they call us. Probably a lot worse than that. But make sure that you guys are using the gifts that God has given you. Samson used his strength one last time for a lot of good. And there's a lot of good in us that we're not using. I would just encourage you guys to make your Heavenly Father proud, and make your parents proud who invested in you and took time to raise you. Hopefully they raised you right. And maybe you don't have a parent or a family situation where you weren't raised right. Know that there's a Heavenly Father in heaven that loves you and wants to set you on the right path and welcome you home someday into heaven. So that's my encouragement. So hopefully you guys can relate to some Bible character. That's how I feel like I relate to Samson. Thank you guys for joining me today. And finish well, just like Samson. And remember to marry, maker, and journey with Jesus. Thanks for joining us.